Mr. Nasheed, I'm Naima McGee with EUR Web. Pleasure to speak with you today, sir, about
Absolutely.
this very exciting project, Microphone Check. And let me just say, I've been following the conversation on Twitter for a while,
Hmm.
from the inspiration behind this project to the moment you announced
Yes,
that this
ma'am.
documentary was coming. So, for
Yes.
my readers who don't know the backstory, and we'll get more into that a little bit later, tell me,
Mhm.
sir, in your own words, what inspired you to create Microphone Check, and what do you hope audiences take away from the film?
Well, I'm a historian and I've done a lot of historic documentaries like the Hidden Colors series, 1804, American Maroon, and I'm also a fan of the hip hop culture. And around the 50th anniversary of hip hop, we kept getting these narratives of all of these other groups who were the real originators of it, or they were co creators of the culture. So we kept hearing this narrative, and a lot of the real originators and creators of the culture were kind of getting pushed to the back burner. So I wanted to do a documentary to really set the record straight, because there's a lot of documentaries out here saying everybody and their mama created hip hop except the real people who actually created it. So that was the inspiration. I wanted to tell the true story about the origin of hip hop and all of the elements related to hip hop.
And so, can you describe the process of gathering the interviews and the footage for this documentary? And who are some of the legendary figures that are featured?
Now, in this film, this is the first film that has almost all of the original pioneers from the 70s. And what we did in this movie, we focused a lot on what happened in the early to mid 70s, because a lot of hip hop documentaries, what they'll do, they'll talk about, well, the party happened in 1973 at a Kool Herc's apartment, and then they jump to like the 80s or the 90s. They'll skip over a couple of decades. So I said, we need to focus on the people who were there in the very beginning, the real pioneers. So we got Coke LaRock, who's the first hip hop MC. We got DJ Hollywood, who was the first person to actually rap over records, rap bars over records. We got Melly Mel. We know he's the legendary Melly Mel. His record it speaks for itself. We got Busy B, one of the first solo hip hop MCs, and he was one of the first people to be in a viral beef. He got into an infamous beef with Kumo D. And speaking of beef, the culture of beefing and rap beefs, we're seeing it today with Drake and Kendrick Lamar. So that's a part of the culture as well. We got the first female MC, Miss Shy Rock, in it. We got the first person who became a graffiti artist, a modern graffiti artist, which is Cornbread. He's in the movie. So we got the first breakdancer, Trixie. He's in the movie, the hip hop breakdown. So we got all of the real pioneers telling the story from their perspective.
So, with so many influential pioneers featured in this doc, how did you approach balancing their stories and perspectives to create a cohesive narrative?
Well, the thing is, there's been so many narratives thrown out there, and nobody ever bothers to talk to the people who were really there in the beginning. There's always this secondary commentary from people who came in the 80s or later on. So, no, this is why, again, we wanted to focus on the 70s. Who was there in the 70s? So, this is who we got. We got the people who were really there, and we're giving firsthand accounts from their perspectives.
What are some of the common misconceptions or myths, right, that you felt were important to address in this project?
Yeah, very good question. One of the biggest myths is that hip hop came from Jamaican culture, which is not true. There was a big myth that got started in the 80s that rapping came from Jamaican toasting. That's completely not true. We've been rapping over here. Foundational Black Americans been rapping since the 1920s over records. Rapping is basically rhyming in an atonal fashion over a beat. And we've been doing that for decades. We even in the movie, we talk about the Jubilaires, and we talk about Louis Armstrong. He rapped over records to a certain degree. We talk about a brother named Pig Meat Markham, who had records in the 1960s that influenced some of the early MCs, where he was rhyming over records. So we clear that up. Another misconception is that there is a co-founder myth of Blacks and Latinos creating hip hop together. That's not true. Our Latino brothers and sisters came later on, and they were the first students of hip hop. So it's very important to get that story straight, because when people use this narrative that there was a 50-50 co-creation, it eventually morphs into where we got it from them. So we got to clear all of that stuff up and tell the truth, and have the pioneers tell the truth.
When you announced that this documentary was coming, I was surprised. I said, Tariq doesn't waste time.
Oh,
I
no.
saw you, trying to clear the air and set the record straight online. And then in a blink of an eye, you announced this documentary. So
Yeah.
had this already been in the works, or did this come up when the
It
Latinos and Jamaicans were coming at you about we're the originators?
Yeah, yeah. When we saw that, I said, okay, let me get out here and just really get this record straight. Because now, again, I do stuff fast. I can get stuff done real quickly and get on the phone. And I got a track record where people they respect what I do, and many of the pioneers were already fans of my work. So it wasn't that hard to get the brothers and sisters on the phone to get the record straight. And I thought it was very important because what happens is hip hop now is going to the Olympics this year. Now that there's a big corporate push for hip hop, there's this thing now where the original people who created it, are being pushed to the back burner. And that always happens to genres we create. We create these genres, and then when we reclaim them, we're treated as guests in our own genres. Like our good sister Beyonce, they're treating her like a guest in country music, which is an art form that we created as foundational Black Americans. So it's perfectly fine for us to reclaim some of these genres that we created.
Was it challenging at all curating the list of pioneers you wanted to feature? I mean, how did you dwindle down the list of people that you reached out to or wanted to reach out to? And were there any people you wanted to get for this, but you couldn't get?
Yeah. So it was it was just basically getting on the phone and talking to people. And when they saw that I was behind it, because a lot of people ask these brothers and sisters to be in films all the time. So they kind of dismiss them because, a lot of the narratives are skewed. But when they saw that I was doing it, people knew that I'm going to tell the truth and I'm going to bring facts to the situation. So I got pretty much everybody that I wanted. We got Grandmaster Caz, we got our sister Debbie D, who's very influential. I did want Grandmaster Flash. I wanted him, and I spoke with him on the phone. It was a scheduling issue, um, but pretty much we got everybody who we wanted to get in the film.
What I also love about this is new hip hop heads or the younger generation, especially the younger generation who likes to be dismissive of the pioneers. They're going to learn a lot about individuals they've never heard about when they tap into microphone check. So on that note, in your research and interviews, were there any surprising or lesser known insights about the birth and evolution of hip hop that emerged, which surprised you?
Yeah, there were a lot of other people who were instrumental in the creation of hip hop in the early to mid 70s that the dominant media, they just kind of ignored. There's a brother named Disco King Mario who was extremely influential in the creation of hip hop. He was the first, what they call hip hop entrepreneur. He was a former gang member, but he had a lot of street connections. And he was one of the people who helped spread hip hop around the Bronx because he could move and shake around the area. They just named a co-named a street after him, I think last year. So he is starting to get some of the recognition he deserves, and we have his daughter in the movie as well. There's another brother who's never talked about, who was a contemporary of Kool Herc, a brother named DJ Smokey. We talk about him in the film. So there's a lot of these pioneers that a lot of folks just don't know about. Also, we got, like I mentioned earlier, we have Cornbread, who came out of Philly. Modern graffiti, as we know it, came out of Philly. Then it went up to the Bronx. A lot of folks don't know that. So we talk about all of that stuff. We break it all down.
This documentary also includes, a lot of rare footage or unseen footage for historical context. So, are there any memorable or impactful moments from the archives that you uncovered during the production process that you were like, oh, wow, this has to be included,
Yeah, yeah, we got some short clips. We got MC Shy Rock. We got some film of her rapping in like 1978. We got some footage of a block party happening in New York in 1977 with Grandmaster Flash and a guy named Keith Cowboy rhyming. That's extremely rare. That's one of the first pieces of real hip hop footage there. Also, we have a lot of recordings of raps from the 1970s because there were a lot of other records where people were rhyming on them, a lot of rare records. So we have that as well. So there's a lot of Easter eggs and nuggets in this film that people are going to really enjoy.
But were there any major challenges you face while putting, kind of curating and getting the footage and researching, and how did you overcome these challenges?
What I wanted to do, I really wanted to get some Latinos in it because of the whole, well, we created a 50-50. Oh, okay. And I asked around and I was talking to Latin scholars or whatever, and I was kind of getting the runaround. I did want to get some Latinos in it. So if anybody says, hey, how come you didn't have Latinos? I tried my best. I set up interviews with certain people who were flaking out. And again, we reached out and we wanted to have certain Latino folks to come on in and tell their side. A lot of people were conveniently not available. So we just want to let that be straight for the record. So,
I'm glad you mentioned that. Really quickly, I know you have a lot of screenings coming up,
yes.
right? Any special panel events, any special, tie-ins that you can tease some attendees in certain cities that they could be looking forward to?
Well, we're gonna have a big red carpet event in New York. New York, we got a huge red carpet event that's going to happen Memorial Day weekend on May 25th. I'm going to be at that one. I'm going to also be at the screening here in Los Angeles on Thursday, the 23rd, May 23rd. And it's the New York one is going to be huge. There's two big showings in New York. The first one is sold out. The second one is almost sold out. So New York is going to be in the house heavy. So these screenings are going to be phenomenal around the country.
After the screenings, how can the public watch?
Yeah, we'll have the Blu-ray of the film ready in the beginning of June. So yes, they can see the movie the beginning of June, and also we're going to have it later on in June on our website fbastream.com. But the Blu-ray will be available on Amazon the beginning of June.
What do you personally find most inspiring or significant about the stories shared by the early hip hop pioneers featured in this documentary?
It was very inspirational to see these were teenagers who created hip hop. We got to keep that in the right perspective. These were like 14, 15, and 16-year-olds. And at the time when they were creating this culture, they were in an area in the Bronx where the dominant society had basically decimated the Bronx. You had landlords bombing buildings, burning down buildings, resources for school supplies were being drained from the community. People were not being employed the way they needed to be. So they just left people to wade in the water there in the Bronx. And those brothers and sisters said, you know what, we're not going to turn into junkies or we're not going to be derelicts. We're going to get some kind of code. We're going to get our mothers and fathers' records and create our own culture and have a good time and join forces with each other so that we can do something at least halfway constructive and positive. And I think that's a very inspirational story.
What are you most excited about new hip hop heads and old school hip hop heads experiencing when they deep dive into Microphone Check?
I just want us to see the historic context of it and see where it came from and see that we over here, our foundational Black Americans, we have created so many genres and so many different cultures and so many music forms. And I just want people to see that this is just another form that we created and we got it from the mud. We created something from nothing and made something very constructive and something that the world enjoys. So that's a part of our culture. And I want people to understand that. It's very important to understand as part of our culture.
Very good. Well, Tariq, those are my questions.
Okay.
Listen, as a longtime fan and follower of your work, it's been an honor to speak with you. Thank you for giving me your time today, sir.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, beloved. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.